Good afternoon, everyone. This is your Congressman Dave Joyce, and welcome to today's telephone town hall. This is an unprecedented time for our country and for the state of Ohio, and it is very important that we continue to stay informed. Here on the line with me to keep you up to date on the resources available to help workers and businesses who have been impacted by the coronavirus pandemic are our Lieutenant Governor, John Husted, who I got to give a shout out to. He and the governor have done a hell of a job helping Ohio here and keeping us Buckeyes ahead of the curve. We also have Bruce Madson, the Assistant Director of Employment Services at the Ohio Department of Jobs and Family Services. We have Kevin Boehner from the Ohio Chamber of Commerce, Jerry Cirino, a Lake County Commissioner, Kate Hunyady, a District Congressional Liaison with the IRS, and Marlene Fitz from the Cleveland IRS office. And I want to thank each of you for taking the time to join me for this telephone town hall to keep the hardworking people and small business owners of Ohio 14 informed during this difficult time. Lieutenant Governor Husted, I know that you're on a tight schedule, and I know you're very busy, but I just appreciate the time you're spending with us today, so I want to begin with a few questions for you. Last Thursday, you announced the launch of a website specifically geared toward matching essential businesses with Ohioans who are able and willing to work as essential employees during this COVID-19 pandemic. And yesterday, you announced the Office of Small Business Relief. Can you walk our callers through these resources and what they offer to both employers and workers?
Sure, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you, Congressman Joyce. This is certainly a time where all of us have to work together in government, and appreciate the support we've had from you. Let me start with the job situation. We have two ironic things happening right now. Is that because of the coronavirus is not just a health virus, it is an economic virus that has caused lots of people to lose their jobs as a result of the circumstances that we face in trying to control the spread. But simultaneously, we have businesses that are growing to meet the demands of the marketplace. A lot of those are in food distribution, supply chain, a lot of them in manufacturing who are trying to ramp up to produce the personal protection equipment that the frontline workers need. And certainly the healthcare industry has a lot of need as well. And so we have over 30,000 jobs that have been posted by over 480 companies all around the state at coronavirus.ohio.gov/job search. And it's really important, if you know anybody or if you're capable of going to work in any of these occupations, it's really important because this is the supply chain that we all depend on for health products and food. And so it's really important that we staff these companies up during this difficult time. So if you're in a position, either full-time or part-time, to help out there, it is a big deal to keep things humming in the state of Ohio. Secondly, on the business services side, we have that at the coronavirus.ohio.gov website. It's just that address and /business help. And what we've done over time is we've added piece by piece, a BWC deferral and now rebate, a moratorium on or a grace period on health insurance payments, on property casualty payments, small business administration assistance, which you provided through the CARES Act, that will help businesses in some cases get forgivable loans to help them get through the difficult time. A variety of services that businesses need are available, and the common questions and answers are right there for you. But if that website itself does not provide you enough, there's a telephone number and a web address at the bottom, or an email address at the bottom, at the Development Services Agency here in state government, and they can deploy their personnel and resources in getting your questions answered. So really, this is we're trying to, we really pride ourselves on listening to what the problem is and trying to find a solution for it. What we've done is listen to the employers tell us about all the kinds of people they need to hire. We're trying to help them with that. We've heard businesses who've been impacted by this negatively talk about the challenges that they have, and this business help website and customer service tool is there to help them.
Well, you've certainly been fantastic in taking up that cause in your own stead. But I also hear a lot of interest from my constituents about the Ohio Manufacturing Alliance to fight COVID-19. Can you explain this private-public partnership to our callers and how manufacturing companies in Northeast Ohio can help play an important role in helping our communities respond to the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, absolutely. As Governor DeWine often says, if there's one thing we're going to learn from this is that we can't have our critical healthcare supply chain be outsourced to other countries. We have to be able to produce these things in America going forward, and that's a conversation for another day. But that certainly has to be a critical lesson learned from all of this. We don't want to have to depend on foreign nations and foreign companies for our critical medical supplies. And as a result, Ohio is not waiting for somebody else to solve our problem. We have formed an alliance through the Manufacturers Association, through Magnet in Cleveland, and a variety of other partners to develop these top 10 lists, this top 10 list of personal protection equipment. And that might include ventilators, that might include N95 masks, it might include hand sanitizer, a variety of manufacturers, gowns, things like that are important for medical personnel to have. We're working with these manufacturers who retooled themselves to help be part of that supply chain. And this alliance now has 1,000 manufacturers who are offering something to the solution across our great state. And it is American ingenuity, as I know you fully appreciate, and I'm sure many of the people on this call. The idea that you went from making one product to some completely different product in a short period of time is not something that usually happens. But in this particular case, many manufacturers have stepped up to do that. We are Ohio proud about that.
That's the American way, and certainly the Buckeyes, I'm glad to see the Buckeyes are leading the program on that. You also have on your website on coronavirus.ohio.gov a tab titled Resources for Economic Support. Can you explain, ladies and gentlemen, what resources can people find there? And is there information for both individuals and families, as well as small businesses and nonprofits who are struggling right now?
Yeah, it's all of the above. That might be anything from making sure that you can get your utilities paid for, or helping to give you guidelines on how we're putting a moratorium on evictions. Doesn't mean that if you can pay your rent, you don't have to pay your rent. Doesn't mean if you can't pay your mortgage, you don't pay your mortgage. But it does give a little guidance on some of the ways that you can help work through those issues. It talks about unemployment compensation. It talks about one of the things that you passed in the CARES Act that I should point out. Well, I guess let me hit on two of these things. First of all, the unemployment comp system. We're well over these numbers will be announced tomorrow, but we continue to add about 35,000 people a day to the unemployment rolls in Ohio. Just to put this in perspective, that is, we had more people. We had 100,000 more people apply for unemployment last week or in 2 weeks than we had in on average, or a total amount in 2019. So just put that in perspective. It's just amazing how people have been impacted. We know sometimes it's a little slow for some folks, either through the website or the call center, but we're staffing up. We're going to be probably by the end of the day tomorrow up to 1,000 people. That's around 700 more than we had when we started to help with this, to help process those requests. And then in the CARES Act, which you were part of helping to make a reality, we're also trying to help people who are independent business owners, meaning that they were maybe 1099 or self-employed. There's a provision in there, as you well know, that helps those folks because the unemployment system isn't designed for them. But there's no system to send that money out through or even to apply. So we are building that system and hope to have it available sometime by early to mid-May. And we know that people are struggling, but we can only work as fast as we can on standing up an entirely new program, and understand that anybody, no matter where you are in that pipeline that I just discussed, The minute that you are eligible, all of your benefits will be backdated to that time period. So know that just because you can't apply or you didn't get your application in as quickly as you had wanted to, that we will ultimately get those benefits to you.
Well, you've done a hell of a job with that too, I got to admit, because our job was, we saw in CARES Act, was to get the relief to you and the governor on the front lines of the fight, and they have to build a whole independent system to disperse that in a week. It has not been necessarily easy, and I certainly appreciate what you've done. And I know you have to run. Now, again, I want to thank you for taking the time to join us on this call today. You and the governor have just done an incredible job of helping these people of Ohio during this difficult time. And I know all of Ohio 14 joins me in thanking you for your leadership. And, as we're going out here, I know today that you were talking about the BWC and getting some of that money out of the BWC and back to the employers. Any other additional updates or parting advice or words of encouragement you'd like to share with our callers before you go?
Yeah, let me say this. There are a lot of people who ask the question, when are we going to get out of this? When's life going to go back to normal? Well, I don't know that life is going to go back to what we consider normal anytime soon, but there is good reason to have hope. The models were showing that we were going to have up to 10,000 people contracting coronavirus a day. Because of the stay-at-home order and the fact that we were decisive, Governor DeWine was decisive. He did this early. We put these protective orders in place to keep that personal social distance from occurring. Now the modeling shows that Ohioans are probably going to contract coronavirus at a pace of about 1,600 a day. What that means ultimately is that we're going to avoid the catastrophic scenarios that were originally being prognosticated. That's great news. But you're going to continue to see for a little while longer the hospitalizations go up and the deaths continue to rise because this lags. The coronavirus lags. You can be 14 days from the time that you contracted it until you actually start to see symptoms. And so there's a little lag time in the data. But as we begin to stabilize and we see the number of people who are being hospitalized and from this go down, then we'll be in a position to begin to ease those restrictions. But health and hygiene, personal distancing, clean workplaces, not having congregations and crowds come together, that's going to be part of our reality for months into the future. But know that we are getting through this as Ohioans better than most states that are similarly situated, and it's really because of you. It's because everybody who's on the other end of this call is doing what we've asked you to do to slow the spread. Ohio is going to come out of this healthier and more economically sound than we otherwise would have, and it's thanks to the great people of this state who've done what we've asked. So thank you, Congressman Joyce. A nod to your constituents and mine, and Governor DeWine's out there. We're all in this together. God bless you all during this Holy Week.
Thank you for your leadership during this. That's what's got us to where we are today, and so we can all be proud that we're working together under your leadership with the governor. Thank you. And, I appreciate Assistant Director Madson, Mr. Boehner, Commissioner Cirino, Ms. Hunyady, and Ms. Fitz for their patience while we accommodated the Lieutenant Governor's schedule. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to have each of you briefly introduce yourselves and how you're working to help Northeastern Ohio's workers and small businesses during this pandemic. We'll start with you, Director Madson.
Yes, thank you, Congressman. Basically, I oversee the unemployment division and the reemployment services for the department, and we are working day and night to try to accommodate the unprecedented number of people seeking assistance with their unemployment benefits right now. It has been all hands on deck. We have brought in the individuals from all of our other services and began retraining them and equipping them to take telephone calls. We took 1.7 million calls in March, and wow. We have really, the month before we took 112,000. So, that gives you an idea of just how dramatic the increase was, and it came on us very quickly, so we had no time to prepare for what we were about to face. We do recognize that, that's neither here nor there for anybody who is worried about the putting food on the table and supporting their family and having some money coming in. So we are prioritizing everything we can possibly do to get the new system online, get claims processed. We've begun issuing payments so far. We put out $114 million to more than 180,000 claimants, and we're catching up, and more people are getting through. So it's quite a challenge for an agency that is responsible for basic needs for individuals. We take this very, very seriously, and it has been our goal for all of the people at Job and Family Services to try to provide all the assistance that Ohioans need to weather the storm of the COVID-19 virus. We appreciate the leadership we've gotten from the governor and lieutenant governor, and are proud to be Ohioans and moving forward.
Well, great. Thank you for the work you're doing. That's quite a volume that you've had. Mr. Boehner, thank you for being on again, Kevin. I knew you were on last week, and you provide some valuable insight from the chambers. How's things going?
Things are going pretty well. They're very busy, as you might imagine. I want to say thanks, Congressman, for having me on again, and thank you to your constituents for calling in. As you said, my name is Kevin Boehner. I'm our Director of Small Business and Workforce Policy for the Ohio Chamber of Commerce. And during this time, the Ohio Chamber of Commerce is really just serving as a resource for our members and for businesses all over the state, especially Northeast Ohio. We have many members from Northeast Ohio. Just trying to be a resource to connect business owners with what's out there. I know we'll talk a lot about some of those programs that are available to business owners as this call continues. But generally speaking, we're just trying to be a resource and assist businesses through this unprecedented time. So thanks again, Congressman, for having me on the call.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming back. And my dear friend Jerry Cirino, the commissioner, you do a heck of a job there in Lake County, the largest county in our congressional district. And you, I know, see this on both ends as a caring commissioner, but also having been a small businessman and advising small business. How are things going in the county?
Well, thank you, Congressman, for having me on. It's a great opportunity to talk with everybody. We're really working on a couple of things. First of all, our main concern in the county at the commissioner's office is to help secure and maintain the health of our residents. And so, and we're coordinating in that regard with the health district and with all of the healthcare providers in the county. And we have regular calls, coordinating meetings and other activities to make sure that no need goes unattended to. And I think we're having great success and great cooperation with that. We're also, our task is to keep the county offices functioning, albeit under kind of unique circumstances here. So we have to make sure that the courts, the auditor's office, the recorder's office, the sheriff, the jail, et cetera, all of those things, so that we can still be conducting, again, on a more limited basis in some cases, all of the important county functions that need to be happening in order to serve our people. And we're also working hard and I'm spending a lot of time, Congressman, on supporting our businesses. And as in my work that I also do as a small business consultant, spending a lot of time helping businesses kind of work through, how to take advantage of all of the great things that are in the CARES Act that you and your colleagues passed recently. Prior to the CARES Act being published or being passed, I was advising business owners to make sure that they tapped into their lines of credit in case they were to get very tight or dry up. And many of them did that. And now the CARES Act provides them with phenomenal opportunities. And we're going through every detail of the CARES Act with clients that we serve, and any businesses that I talk with as a commissioner as well, to make sure that they know how to tap into the liquidity, which is critical at this point in time for many companies right now. If they don't address their liquidity issues or challenges, many of them will not open again when this is over with. And we want to make sure that as many as possible can maintain enough liquidity to ride out this storm and be back in business when things open up here.
That's important, because we've got to have businesses open so people can get back to work or find new employment if they need to. So thank you for that.
Exactly.
Ms. Hunyady and Ms. Fitz, on the IRS end of it, I don't know if you're covering different angles or who wanted to tell us a little bit about what you got going on with the IRS. We've sure changed your schedule.
This is Kate Hunyady. I'll go ahead and speak for us, if I may. That's all right with
Sure.
Marlene. We kind of we kind of have the same goal, she and I, in our different roles. So as you said, I do work for the Internal Revenue Service. I don't really like to advertise that, particularly at this time of year, but I'm happy to be here, and we thank you for having us on this call as well. I work in the small but mighty Legislative Affairs Division of the IRS, and I work with the district congressional offices in 5 states as a liaison between them and the IRS, which basically means when constituents have questions about any IRS matter and they come to the district offices, then they can contact me and hopefully we can get them an answer, or they can contact Marlene. Marlene is the local taxpayer advocate in the Cleveland office, and generally the taxpayer advocate office handles account-specific cases or inquiries, while we in legislative affairs kind of handle more procedural type questions or tax law or technical questions. So right now, I think I can speak for Marlene when I say that the 99.999% of our questions are about the CARES Act provisions that the IRS is kind of trying to manage at this time. So I feel like that's my job at the moment. But yes, thank you for having us. And Marlene, if I missed anything, please feel free to let me know. Let everyone else.
Yes, you covered it all, Kate. I do appreciate the opportunity to be invited for this call as well.
Well, great. Again, thank you all for taking the time to join me for today's telephone town hall that provides information and resources to help us, our hardworking Buckeyes, get through this crisis. And I want to take a moment to let our callers know how they can participate and ask a question. To ask a question at any time throughout the call, press *3. Once you do that, you'll be put in a queue in order to ask a question. Please keep in mind that on these calls, we get hundreds of people who like to ask questions. We'll do our best to answer as many as we can. Now, this is the 4th telephone town hall that I've had over the past few weeks. The first focused on informing people about the disease, the other about critical health information such as testing. The second focused on important information for seniors and caregivers. Last week's town hall focused on information for small businesses. Now, today's town call, we will address some additional questions for small businesses, and our main focus is on workers. The CARES Act, the third COVID-19 relief package that Congress passed, provided much-needed temporary support for American workers impacted by the pandemic, dedicating $250 billion to give workers more access to unemployment benefits during this public health emergency. Overall, the bill creates a temporary pandemic unemployment assistance program, expands coverage to more workers, including self-employed, contractors, and furloughed workers, increases Americans' unemployment benefits by $600 a week for the next 4 months, makes available 13 additional weeks of unemployment for those who need it, waives the normal 1-week waiting period, includes funding to offset 50% of the cost of state and local government and nonprofits for cost of paying unemployment to the workers, and supports short-time work share programs as an alternative to layoffs. I know there's been a lot of Ohio workers impacted by this public health crisis, and the Ohio Department of Jobs and Family Services have been on the front lines working to help them. Now, Assistant Director Madson, I know there are a lot of callers who are eager to understand more about the unemployment benefits, so let's dive right in with you. If an employer is forced to lay off employees due to losses caused by the coronavirus pandemic, will those employees be eligible for unemployment insurance benefits? And if those employees are eligible, how do they go about applying for those benefits?
Yes, in most cases they will be. It's, of course, the determination of eligibility for benefits is an individual determination, so it would depend on possibly how long they'd been employed or what kind of wages that they had made going into that. But for traditional unemployment benefits, they will be eligible. We've asked employers to inform their people to use the mass layoff number when they apply of 2000180. That identifies it as a coronavirus related layoff and expedites all of the processing so that we can get them the determination and benefits as soon as possible. They can apply through unemployment.ohio.gov online. That's the best way to do it. And or if they are unable to do that and they want to do it on the phone, it's 877-644-6562. I would suggest if you're trying to do it on the telephone, to call if possible on off hours. I mean, in the evening or morning early, as opposed to in the middle of the day. You have a better chance of getting through quickly. But if you don't get through, keep with it. If you just have a simple question that you need answered and you just need to find out about that, you can email that question to UCTech, that's UCTECH at jfs.ohio.gov, and someone will get back to you with the answer to your question if you're trying to get through on the phone and can't reach someone to ask that question. But we are processing claims right now. We are getting checks out, so I think we're starting to see the log jam breaking, and we're encouraging everyone who thinks they may be potentially eligible to apply. In the coming weeks, we will be rolling out the pandemic assistance site, which we had to build a new site for that, which will have some additional benefits that will be available for individuals who were self-employed or 1099 employees, I guess, workers who did not receive a W-2 with their, for their taxes. Those individuals will also be eligible, or individuals who did not work enough hours and weeks to qualify for Ohio unemployment insurance will be eligible for the pandemic unemployment insurance. So we're trying to get through to as many people as possible potentially being eligible to receive both these regular benefits and the additional $600 per week that is available for the next 4 months for through the CARES Act. So this is an important service. We're trying desperately to get it to as many people as quickly as possible. And I would encourage you, if you have trouble getting through, stay with it. We are adding operators, daily, and our hours have been extended. So I think we're taking our actual call applications from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. weekdays, 9 a.m. to 5 on Saturdays, and 9 to 1 on Sundays. So, and we'll see. We could even extend those further as we get more people on board. But we are recruiting people and training them as we go.
That's great. It's tremendous volume increase for you. I understand that. Mr. Boehner, Can you walk our callers through what the PPP offers employers and how it can help keep workers on payroll? And what can a PPP loan be used for? And how do employers go about applying for one?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Congressman. I'm sure many of your constituents, if not all, have heard of the Paycheck Protection Program, also known as PPP, that was included in the CARES Act, which allocates $350 billion to help small businesses keep workers employed during the pandemic and economic downturn. So employers can apply for a loan up to 2.5 times the borrower's average monthly payroll cost, not to exceed $10 million. So the loan is to be used for the following purposes: payroll costs, interest on the mortgage obligation incurred in the ordinary course of business, rent on a leasing agreement, payment on utilities. For borrowers with tipped employees, additional wages paid to those employees. Also, there's an opportunity for the loans to be forgiven should they be used for these purposes. Employers are encouraged to apply sooner rather than later due to the limited amount of funds in the program. I know that many folks are experiencing some issues there. There's been a mass rush on applications, and I know that the U.S. Treasurer said that they're going to be reaching out to Congress to authorize some more funding for the program moving forward on top of the $350 billion. You can apply through an SBA lender or through any federally insured depository institution, federally insured credit union, and farm credit system institution that is participating. I know there will be more lenders as we go through this program that will be approved For more information on PPP, please go to www.treasury.gov or www.sba.gov.
Yes, and the money will be there for it. They've been overwhelmed with the applications, I know, and they're continuing to provide guidance as they move along. And you can find a lot of the guidance that even the banks are getting. And just today, the Secretary Mnuchin was on a call with them this morning that one of the things they're allowing banks to do is use their own loan docs, versus having to wait for some SBA guided ones to help facilitate that. So I know they're trying to help as many folks as they can, and will continue to do that. Now, Commissioner Cirino, as a former CEO of a medical device company and as a small business consultant, what would you advise a small business to do right now? And what steps do you suggest they take to help protect themselves and their workers from the current economic crisis caused by this pandemic?
Well, that's a great question, Congressman. And I think, the answer depends a little bit on the condition of the business. There are some businesses that are in a very liquid position, and they may be able to ride out the storm without doing anything extraordinary right now, maybe a slight reduction in revenues, but they're still operating if they're an essential company. But the vast majority of businesses that are being severely affected with loss of customers is really to go into the CARES Act, because I've had some business owners claim that they really don't like sending all the information that's required, their financial information and so on. But it's really no different than applying for a loan under other ordinary circumstances. And if the opportunity is there to be able to keep their employees on staff and get ready for what's coming next in terms of the recovery, the CARES Act is phenomenal. I mean, if they maintain their employee base, Congressman, this loan is completely forgiven. It becomes effectively a grant. And so I am, directing and recommending to all of our clients and others that I talk to as a commissioner in the county to really make sure that they aggressively go after this, work with their local banks to be able to secure the loan and get the proper documents in place. And what I'm also telling them is sort of a last point of discussion with them is get ready and start planning now for the recovery, because this is, as the Lieutenant Governor gave us some light at the end of the tunnel in his comments, this is going to be over, and businesses are going to need to come back and maybe change their business models a little bit, but they need to come back, and now is the time to be planning on what your strategy is when things get reopened.
Well, that's important to do. Is when we do have the green light to get it back open, to be able to hit the ground running. Ms. Hunyady, I know a lot of my constituents have questions about the economic impacts payment. Can you walk our callers through who is eligible to receive those payments, how much is included in those payments, and if individuals have to take any actions in order to receive them?
Yes, Congressman, I can certainly do that. So eligible recipients for the economic impact payments must be U.S. residents, and they also have to have a valid Social Security number. And another piece of the puzzle is that these are individuals who cannot be claimed as a dependent on someone else's tax return. And there is an income threshold that has to be considered as well. And this is for individuals, anyone whose adjusted gross income is less than $99,000. For married couples filing jointly, or filing together, I should say, it's $198,000. And for those who file as a head of household, it's $136,500. The amount of the payment, the maximum amount of the payment, is $1,200 for individuals or head of household filers, and then double that for married filers, so $2,400. And then in addition to that, taxpayers with qualifying children can also receive $500 for each qualifying child. With respect to receiving the payments, if an individual has filed or a married couple has filed a tax return for either 2019 or 2018, then no further action is required. If an individual receives Social Security or railroad retirement benefits, anything that would be reported to them on a Form 1099, they too are not required to take any further action. There are some groups, unfortunately, that will be asked. If you don't fall into any of those categories, you are being asked at this time to file what we're calling a simple tax return. We're not sure what that looks like yet, but we are working on it. And so stay tuned, I guess, for that.
Assistant Director Madson, we touched a bit on this during my last telephone town hall, but for those who weren't able to join that call last week, can you explain the Ohio Department of Jobs and Family Services Voluntary Layoff Aversion Program, Shared Work Ohio? How does it help employers retain trained staff during times to reduce business activity, and what are the eligibility requirements?
Sure. The program was created after the last recession. I wish we would have had it in place back then because it's a good tool. How it works is that an employer who is going through a down cycle but expects business to return can, instead of laying off, let's say, 20 workers, if they had that, say that was how many they had, would lay off, would reduce the hours of all the workers for a larger number of workers. And then those workers would get a supplemental unemployment insurance payment in order to kind of spread the pain of the reduced business, but then they would still be connected to the employer. So as the business picked up again, you wouldn't lose your skilled workers. That's the way it works in the non-pandemic time. But in the CARES Act, it was expanded even further to allow that those benefits that were provided to the individuals that worked for that company, the benefits would be covered 100% by the federal government. So there would never be a tax increase in the future for that employer to pay for the benefits that were provided to their individuals. The eligibility for this kind of service would be the company has to have no less than 2 employees involved. It cannot be seasonal employees or temporary or intermittent employees, but it can be part-time. They have to reduce the hours no more than 50%. That's the limit in law of how many of how big a reduction there can be, and we enter into an agreement with them. The benefits then are calculated for the individuals whose hours are reduced. They receive the supplemental payment, and the employer keeps them connected to them. It's a great deal for an employer who has highly skilled, or they've invested a lot in training their staff, and they don't want to lose them. You know, they don't want to start over again.
Sure.
So they want to hang on to those people and make it as easy as possible. The interesting thing that it adds right now is that during the period of the between now and the end of July, those employees who had reduced hours would also be eligible for the additional $600 per week. So essentially, the employer would be delivering a raise to those individuals to keep them continued working, rather than them getting additional money to not work. You know, so it's a great program for employers if they've got enough liquidity to keep people employed at least part-time. And another requirement is you have to agree to maintain their health insurance benefits during that period of reduced work.
Well, yeah, no one wants to lose good trained workers. I appreciate that. Ms. Fitz, I know the federal income tax filing due date has been moved from April 15th to July 15th. I also know that some constituents are still unsure about waiting until July 15th to make any payments that were previously due on the 15th. Can you clarify that those who wait until July 15th to submit their payments will not face any interest or late payment penalties, regardless of the amount owed? And also, on the if you were going to get a refund, what is the quickest way for individuals to get their refund?
Sure, Congressman. What you need to do in order to get your federal tax refund for 2020, I would suggest that you file them as quickly as possible. The best way to file at this time is to e-file because a lot of IRS offices are closed and are not in the office due to the COVID-19 outbreak. So you would need to go ahead and e-file online. And the deadline has been extended from April 15th to July 15th. And you do not have to do anything. It's automatic for all individuals, all businesses. Penalties and interest will begin to accrue on any remaining unpaid balances as of July 16, 2020. You would automatically avoid interest and penalties on the taxes paid by July 15th. And after July 15th, any individual or business is entitled to file an extension if they are unable to file the tax returns at that time. You can file an extension if you for individuals by using Form 4868 through their tax professional or tax software, or by using the free file link on irs.gov. Businesses who need additional time must file Form 7004. So the extension through July 15th is for all individuals and businesses.
So for this year, April 15th is really July 15th, and there's no consequences. Got it.
None whatsoever.
As long as you get it done by July 15th. Okay. That's good for people to know because I know a lot of our folks out there, especially our seniors, were worried about that date. You know, I want to take a moment to remind everyone how they can participate and ask a question. We're presently here I'm here, Congressman Dave Joyce, and I'm speaking with Bruce Madson, the Assistant Director of Employment Services at the Ohio Department of Jobs and Family Services, Kevin Boehner from the Ohio Chamber of Commerce, Marlene Fitz and Kate Hunyady from the IRS, and our Lake County Commissioner, Jerry Cirino. If you want to ask a question at any time throughout the call, please press *3. Once you do that, you'll be put in a queue in order to ask a question. Again, we get hundreds of people who like to ask questions. We do our best to answer as many as we can. That's why we're trying to ask some of these questions of this all-star roster that we've got because they can give us direct answers here, and we know that we're good for this stuff. So one last one before we go to live questions to you, Assistant Director Madson. As you know, emergency food providers in every part of the state are seeing a massive increase in demand for food assistance as more Ohioans lose work. That's why on April 1st, I wrote a letter to Secretary of Agriculture Sonny Perdue in support of Ohio Department of Jobs and Family Services, asking him to approve your request as quickly as possible. I'm glad to see Secretary Perdue grant approval for the request yesterday. If I'm not mistaken, this approval will allow you to serve approximately 1.2 million Ohioans. Can you explain this program to our callers and how it will help Ohio Department of Jobs and Family Services support Ohioans in need?
Yes, we are so grateful to you for your efforts in getting this approval expedited for us because this federal approval allows us to waive the administrative verifications that are normally required at food banks. And what this was doing was requiring people to come in for these face-to-face interactions and putting the health at risk of both the people who needed the food assistance and the volunteers and staff at the food banks who were required to do the documentation of all the paperwork to access the services. So this expedited this for the period of April 7th through April 30th during the worst part, we assume and we hope and pray for the pandemic, that this will allow us to avoid having to have people come in for face-to-face verifications, copies, look at all the paperwork. We'll be able to just accept a little more of the certifications that the appropriate eligibility is available, and this will expedite the availability of food to 1.2 million Ohioans during this month of this services. That it was very unfortunate, I think, previously that we were asking people to risk their health in order to get the benefits that they need to feed their families. And this kind of, for a month, gives us the ability to bypass that and not cause people to have to come in for the face-to-face determinations.
Well, having volunteered with our brave men and women from the National Guard at a drive-through site for the Cleveland Food Bank, and seeing the amount of cars that were wrapped around I-90, and even when they shut it down after having served over 4,000 folks, I can tell you that it's people are in need, and I appreciate all the work that you're doing on this. Mr. Boehner, let me ask one last question. You're very kind. Mr. Boehner, let me ask you one last question before we take questions from our listeners. Can you go in more depth about what lenders will be looking for when businesses apply for the Paycheck Protection Program? If you're an independent contractor, sole proprietor, or self-employed individual, will lenders also be looking for any additional or different documentation? And what will people be asked to certify in good faith?
That's a good question, and I've gotten that many times. What I tend to tell people is the short answer here is that the more information you can provide the lenders, the better. What we continue to hear is that the biggest delay, besides the mass rush that has been flooding the application system, is missing information from the applicant. So the more information you have available, the better. You will certainly need to provide your lender with payroll documentation. Lenders will also ask you for a good faith certification that, one, the uncertainty in current economic conditions make the loan request necessary to support ongoing operations. Two, the borrower will use the loan proceeds to retain workers and maintain payroll or make mortgage, lease, or utility payments. Three, the borrower does not have an application pending for a loan duplicative of the purpose and amounts applied for here. And then four, from February 15th of this year to the end of this year, the borrower has not received a loan duplicative of the purpose and amounts applied for here. So that's generally what they're going to look for. If you're an independent contractor, sole proprietor, or self-employed individual, lenders will also be looking for certain documents such as payroll tax filings, forms 1099, and income and expenses from the sole proprietorship.
Thank you very much for the information. I know there's a lot of questions being asked about that. Let's go to some of the questions that people have called in with now. We'll be answering some of those questions by those of us who joined us online. I hope I don't screw this up because I'm still without electricity and the internet here in the basement of my house after the storm last night. And so I'm trying to do this off my iPad with my Verizon account. So if I drop one, I apologize, but I want to start here with Jane. Let's hear from Jane, who's been holding. Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you so much. I have it's an unemployment question. I have a full-time job, and I also had 3 part-time jobs. I had some major back surgery 3 years in a row, so I was trying to earn extra money to pay off that medical debt and some credit card debt because we had to live on a reduced income. So I've been laid off from 3 jobs and asked to take a furlough. It's a short-term furlough from my full-time job, and I'm not sure how that unemployment benefit will work for us. We kind of depend on the part-time money also to live on.
Unfortunately, if you have a full-time job and a part-time job, the part-time income does reduce the unemployment benefit. We would have to be an individual determination on how much you earned in the part-time versus what your benefit calculation would be for the full-time. If you lost them all, then if you weren't working in any of them, then your benefit would be calculated on your total earnings during that during the calculation period. So they would look at your earnings for all of the jobs that you were out of, and that would be your benefit would be calculated on that basis. As long as you have, as long as your total benefit isn't eaten up by your outside income, then you would still be eligible for the additional $600 per week. So I would encourage you to apply. You don't have to accept if it doesn't look like it's a good deal for you after a determination is made. But with all the changes that have taken place, I would encourage you to go ahead and apply and find out exactly how much potential benefit you might be eligible for.
And our next caller, Margaret, I think is right up your alley again. Margaret.
Yeah, I don't know if that's me. I was just calling because I was saying that I didn't have the mass layoff number. Well, actually, it was when my son applied, and I'm curious if that's going to. I mean, it's clearly slowed things up because we haven't heard anything in 3 weeks, and other coworkers have already received payments. But is that going to completely screw us up, or is that going to can something still be done?
No, it's just when we don't have the mass layoff number, it adds an extra step, and we have to go through some verification. So I'm sorry that slowed things up for you. That happened to several people who didn't have it at the beginning. So we will do. There's nothing else required of you. It will be staff. It will just require staff intervention on our part to get it moving through the channels. Otherwise, it's going to trigger some correspondence going out to the employer that doesn't need to happen. So if you get requests for information, you can ignore them, but we will have to fix that, and we will be doing that automatically. Sorry for the delay.
Next, we have, I see my friend Tom Bennett here from the Solon Chamber of Commerce. Tom?
Thank you, Congressman Joyce, and all of the guests on the call today. My question from the ground and what my members are hearing is there's a lot of differences between each bank's lending, but the thing that's common from everybody is what we're hearing is that funding is going to run out sooner than later of the payroll protection program loan. And I wanted to get your insight or take on how likely or a timeline for the next round of stimulus to not leave any small businesses behind during this time.
Well, I could tell you on a call this morning with Secretary Mnuchin and been on it 3 times with him in the last week. His advice was, like on Friday morning when this was getting rolled out, that on the advice and was going out to on Thursday night late to the bank. So there's some confusion. I know that was a lot of the questions was the confusion the banks had as to whether or not they were going to get guaranteed and who was in line for them. And so the one thing we've advised all is to get in line. Make sure you go to your bank, get your applications are in, and then we went through all the money that had been allocated this time around. But this morning's call was that he asked that we continue to fund it, the program. Right now, we're going through the machinations of how we're going to get that accomplished at the House and the Senate, because as just last time we went in and there was some dance around as to how we're going to get it. The funding's there. I know the House and Senate and the bipartisan basis is going to get the funding there. It's just going to be a matter of time. But if you're in the queue, if your application's with the bank and in the queue, then you'll be set up for this. It's going to take a little while to catch up to it, but I can promise you that everybody stands together on making sure that we can get this out to you as soon as possible. And the other thing was there was some confusion as to forms, and there was guidance provided just this morning from the secretary to the banks that said the banks can use their own forms for notes. They don't have to require on any SBA documentation for that. So we're going to continue to fight to get those things out there. And I appreciate your calling in, and glad to help any of the small businesses out there as we continue to wade through this together, because let's face it, we're all in together. We have time for another one or so. Can we take Cindy, please? Cindy Madson?
Yes.
Yes. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Good.
What's your question?
I'm an employer of a small business we've got 20 employees, and we have kept everybody working because we are pretty much essential for the most part. However, quite a few of my employees are not actually having to work because we can't do some of the business that we did. So my question is that reduced work unemployment option that you were talking about, would I be better off to apply for that for my employees that aren't able or that I don't have any work for versus that payroll protection CARES Act? Because I'm sure I have to do one or the other, correct?
Correct.
Uh,
You can't do.
Go ahead.
I don't think you can do both because you're either the payroll protection program is to keep people on the payroll, and the shared work program is reducing your payroll by a particular percentage and everything. So I think you're going to have to. It's going to be an individual determination. We'd have to look at how many people are involved and how much of your hours you would have to reduce them by, whether it was a 25% or 50% or whatever, and kind of weigh the benefits that you might get through each program. I wish there was a simple answer, but I think it works out differently. The math works out differently for employers in different circumstances.
Kevin, do you have anything on that one?
No, I was going to agree with Bruce there. I think it's tough because with the Paycheck Protection Program, you're supposed to have you're supposed to be back to full employment by the end of June. But if you're keeping your employees employed, throughout this, if they're maintaining reduced hours, then maybe the shared work program probably fits better. But I think to Bruce's point, you gotta run the numbers and see what makes sense.
Right, and I know that you can't. The one thing we've heard on and on again is we can't do the double dip. You have to pick one or the other to get through. So,
yeah.
Well, I got some questions here from folks who came online, and so I'll throw it out there to our all of you. And this is from Deborah P. She started a small LLC business last year. She has no employees to pay, but she has to pay a storage unit rent, a business loan, and a business credit card. Does she qualify for any relief?
Yes, this is Kevin. I would say she does qualify for the Paycheck Protection Program in that paying for rent, she would be able to. That would be able to cover that expense. Some of the other expenses, I believe, I'm not sure of exactly how it would fit, but certainly to the rent portion. And I believe her application period would open this Friday, the 10th, for her to apply for that for the Paycheck Protection Program.
And I'm not sure exactly where she's at, but I know if you have questions, the SBA and some of the offices over in Lakeland would be helpful. Jerry, is there anything in the counties where people can go to get this type of information regarding, either the SBA programs or other things that they can go with their specific information and get help?
Yeah, Dave, I think that the best place to go is to the SBA local people representing them, because this is and some of these rules are changing as the days and weeks go by, and the county doesn't really have a function that is going to be able to keep up with that. So I think Bruce's comment was correct, that the SBA local representatives and the banks, the lenders are going to be very important. And if this business owner has a good relationship with their bank, that should be one of the first conversations that should be had.
Well, and then if you have questions, what we've tried to do with our on our line is that we have our website at www.joyce.house.gov, and then we have in there important updates, and then in our weekly wrap, which you can also subscribe to when you go to the www.joyce.house.gov site. We do our best to try to keep current on all these things, because as everyone here on the panel has brought up, these standards are evolving hourly. I mean, as we were talking with this morning with the Secretary of Treasury Secretary, he turned around and got some questions from us, and an hour later on the same conference call came back and said he just directed guidance to the banks to cure some of these problems. So that's why it's important that you continue to go to the SBA.gov, the Treasury.gov, and look for guidance. Your local Chamber of Commerce will help. Your banks help. Everybody asks questions to get those in and figure out how best to navigate this. But we'll do our best to make sure that all of you get the help that you need. And I want to conclude by asking, we're hours up, unfortunately, because these things I know we don't have near enough time for all the questions we're asked. I'd like to ask each of you what parting pieces of advice are for here the people on our panel, the Assistant Director Madson, Mr. Boehner, Ms. Hunyady, Commissioner Cirino. If you had any parting gifts of advice to the individuals here, starting with you, Madson.
Well, I think if I had any parting advice, it would be to try as much as possible to be patient and know that you've got an army of people who are doing their darndest to try to help and to try to get assistance out. And we do regret any delays that people have had or frustrations with getting a hold of us, but stay with it, and we will continue to work towards getting everybody taken care of.
Well, you're doing a yeoman's job because you're processing a year's plus worth of complaints in a week, so that's a lot of work.
Yes, it is.
Keep up the great job. Kevin Boehner.
Yes, first I want to say thanks, Congressman, for having me on the call, and I also want to thank the other panelists for being on, as well as the constituents who are on the call. I think I'll echo what Bruce said in terms of being patient. It's certainly a trying time, and there's so much information out there, and things are changing as we've already discussed. But I would be remiss if I didn't at least reference the Ohio Chamber's website, ohiochamber.com, where we have a coronavirus business resource page, where that serves as kind of a one-stop shop for businesses to find out as much information as they can. We're trying to link resources to businesses throughout the state. And I think that, it also includes all the executive orders that the governor has been putting out. So it's a good resource for businesses to utilize. And again, I think just being patient, there's so much going on, everything's changing, but we're going to get through this together.
You're the best. Thank you very much. That's a great idea. And the Ms. Hunyady.
Yes. Again, thank you for having us on the call as well. I have to say, Marlene and I are shocked that we didn't get more questions, but we are attributing it to the fact that we must have done a really good job in answering the questions that we did have. I would say my best words of wisdom would be, as far as the economic impact payments are concerned, there are a lot of little nuances, a lot of different circumstances that people find people are presenting to us that we couldn't even have imagined. And so I would just ask that everyone be patient as we kind of work through those and try to get answers for everyone on how best to address those individual circumstances. And probably the best advice I could give is if you can, go ahead and file your 2018 or 2019 tax return, and then it should be smooth sailing.
Well, I certainly appreciate it. I'm a little surprised too, as a guy who did tax work on the side, that is very usually a lot of questions for that, but maybe it was Ms. Fitz when she gave the new deadline of July 15th that helped kill some of the questions to make sure that people understand. April 15th this year is July 15th. No worries until July 15th. And
right.
Do you have a website that people can go and look up frequently asked questions that you're getting?
Yes, we have at irs.gov/coronavirus. We are keeping that as up to date as we possibly can. And we actually just redesigned it kind of overnight, literally. I was surprised this morning myself, but we kind of have 3 sections on there, one for individuals, one for businesses, and then one just for general questions. But we have all our news releases there, and we're trying to address as many topics related to the coronavirus mandates. Well, the CARES Act mandates for the coronavirus. Not just the economic impact payments, but things like IRA distributions and I won't go on lest I lead someone into a question. But yeah, that's the best. irs.gov/coronavirus is the best place to go.
Thank you. And Commissioner Cirino, people in Lake County, where can they find help?
Well, we one of the things that we would recommend business owners, particularly, to do is stay in very close touch with the local chambers. I think Kevin would appreciate hearing this. That we have 3 chambers of commerce in Lake County that are very active in providing support for local businesses, particularly smaller businesses. And of course, we have the county government site. And we are trying to be as responsive as we possibly can to the needs of not only business owners, but citizens and employees who find themselves in a tough spot here. I would just also ask everyone to stay in close touch with their local officials, because there is a lot that we can do for them that may not be obvious. And we want to stay in touch with our citizens and our businesses. And the last thing I would ask everyone to do is to support your local restaurants. Our restaurants, certainly not only in Lake County but around the state, have been particularly impacted with suddenly just closures, not partials, et cetera. They just were closed down. And support them with takeout as much as you can. And of course, we're asking everybody to be very generous tippers to help the servers get through this very tough circumstance as well.
Yeah, you're very right. That's a great idea, is to go out, get some takeout, and to make sure that we can try to keep those people going during these tough times. Well, again, I really appreciate it to all of you. Thank you very much for being on here, and thank you to all the constituents who took the time to listen to this important informational discussion. If you have any other concerns you would like to address, you can contact my office by calling toll-free 440-637-8030, or by visiting www.joyce.house.gov, where we also have a coronavirus special tagline that will keep you up to date on all the information that we're getting from the federal government and how to help. Again, www.joyce.house.gov. You can also stay on the line and leave your name and address and a message after the tone, and my office will get back to you as quickly as possible. It truly remains an honor to represent each and every one of you in Northeast Ohio here in the United States House of Representatives. God bless you. May God continue to bless the United States of America. Stay well.